Thanks to you at home for staying with us for the next hour. Happy to have you here. We begin tonight with a serious question. Is Ebola the ISIS of biological agents? Is it? It's just a question. Nobody is saying that Ebola is the ISIS of biological agents. These folks are just posing the question. Is it? As a news person, I have to say this is one of the dumbest things that all of us news people do. We're just asking, right? You put something on your screen that is blatantly false and usually super inflammatory, but then you excuse having to be accountable for it by just putting a question mark on it, right? We're not saying, we're asking. So here, it's not like CNN is saying that Ebola is the ISIS of biological agents, because that would be an insane thing to say. They're just talking about that as an idea. You can't fact check that claim because they're not making it as a claim. Don't you see the question mark? They're just asking. Just like they're just asking here, is the Department of Justice really the Department of Jihad? They're not saying that, of course. Don't misunderstand. It's just a question. Our friends at Fox really excel at this particular kind of journalism. Who is the bigger threat? I mean, they're not suggesting, of course, that Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, is a bigger threat than Ayman al-Zawahiri, the current leader of al-Qaeda. They're not saying it. Don't you see the question mark? They're just asking. There is a question mark right there. No such thing as a stupid question, right? So gas prices are really low right now. They're the lowest they've been in years. By tomorrow, by Saturday, they're expected to dip below $3 a gallon for the first time since 2010. When gas was really expensive, Fox could not stop talking about how terrible that was, that gas prices were so expensive, and how President Obama was to blame for those terrible high gas prices. Gas prices high, it's terrible news. Blame President Obama. Now, with the news that gas prices are falling, a place like Fox is constitutionally incapable of saying President Obama caused the low prices, even though they said he caused the high prices. So now they have decided instead that low gas prices, since they don't, well, how do you get around the, well, they've just decided, okay, low gas prices are bad. Bad maybe? Bad question mark? Cheap gas hurts economy? Question mark. When Fox did that this week, we laughed and laughed and laughed that they did that. And after we put it on TV and laughed at them publicly about it, Fox got mad.
Rachel Maddow took me on, and she got it wrong. She is the face of NBC News, and she turned to the classic style of the left, demagoguery without facts. This time, I was the target, and this time, as always, she twisted the truth to fit her agenda. Here's what Ms. Maddow did. It's an old trick. She took what we call a screen grab of this program, and she showed it on hers. That's me, on camera. And you see the graphic banner at the bottom, which she circled. It asked the question, cheap gas hurts the economy, question mark?
Did you not see the question mark, you liberal demagogue? Look at what their, like, little slogan-y thing is for the segment. What? How do I... It's like they took my face and put it through a corkscrew. Anyway, they were very mad at me. And they went on to explain that they were just asking the question to debunk that question. Turns out, Fox admits, cheap gas does not hurt the economy. They debunked that claim. Thank heavens we have Fox to now clear that up for everyone. So, this is fun. But the news here is this. Gas prices are way down. Gas prices are lower than they've been in years. Thanks to Fox, we know that's good news for the economy, good news for both your family budget, and good news for the economy overall. Hooray. But it is definitely not the only piece of good news about the economy right now. The unemployment rate right now is below 6%. That's the first time since the recession that it has been that low. In terms of people putting in claims for unemployment benefits, that number is at a 14-year low right now. The economy is growing at 3.5%, which is a robust growth rate, robust enough that the Federal Reserve, at least, is stopping doing the monetary stimulus they've been doing since the recession. The chairman of the Fed, Janet Yellen, is going to be meeting with President Obama on Monday about that. They're able to stop the stimulus basically because they believe the economy has been coming back on its own enough that it doesn't need that booster shot anymore. I mean, all that stuff that I just listed, that's good news right now. Gas prices down. The unemployment rate down. Jobless benefits way down. Economic growth way up. It's all going the right way right now. And both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 closed today at record highs. A record for both of them today. The Dow closed at 17,390 points today. The Consumer Sentiment Index, which is a measure of how consumers feel about the economy. It seems like one of those touchy-feely sociology measures of the economy. It's actually one of the most important predictors of future economic growth. It's how much confidence consumers have in the economy. That number is the highest it has been in more than 7 years right now. And as if all that were not enough, happy freaking Halloween! The price of Halloween candy is down. It's been stable for the past couple of years, but this year's Halloween candy is cheap. So add all that together, and people are in a pretty good mood. And in politics, usually all of the economic indicators being up with an exclamation point, except for the ones that are good when they're down, and those right now are down with an exclamation point, usually that means good things for the party in power. Right? Things are going well, don't change horses. That's been the easiest principle in political prognostication since political prognostication. Remember, it's the economy, stupid? Right. It's the economy, stupid. And the economic news right now is good. And so by the principles of how economics meets politics 101, that good economic news should mean good news for the president and the president's party right now. At least theoretically. Instead, though, nobody expects that. Basically, in Washington right now, there isn't even a debate about whether this is going to be a Republican wave year election. The only debate right now is over how tall and how ginormous the Republican tsunami wave is going to be. Here's the thing, though. Look at some of the actual data that's out there. 4 of the 8 races that are going to determine which party controls the Senate, 4 of those races are either tied in the most recent polling or all but tied. In Colorado, Democratic Senator Mark Udall, Republican challenger Cory Gardner are each getting 48% of the vote. In the Iowa Senate race, Republican Joni Ernst and Democrat Bruce Braley are each getting 45% of the vote. In Georgia, Democrat Michelle Nunn and Republican David Perdue are each getting 47% of the vote. In North Carolina, Democratic Senator Kay Hagan is up over Republican Tom Tillis, but only by 1 point, which means that race is virtually tied right now as well. So we're 4 days out from the election, and we've got a bunch of these tied races in a bunch of these key states across the country. And these are the races that are going to determine which party will control the Senate. We've got lots of tied races in important places. The economic fundamentals are good for the party in power, for the president's party right now. So the race-by-race results are tied in the ones that are most consequential right now. The economic numbers are good. And now look at this. This is the one other slice of data we get heading into an election that's usually a really good indicator of what's about to happen. So in 2006, Democrats had a really, really great midterm election year. They picked up 5 Senate seats, got control of the Senate. They picked up more than 30 seats in the House. They got control of the House. Democrats just had a bang-up year in the midterm election in 2006. One of the ways you could tell in advance that they were going to have a bang-up year in 2006 is because of something called the generic ballot. A generic ballot doesn't ask people who they want to vote for specifically. It just asks people which party they want to win, which party they want to control Congress. And this is a thing that sometimes gets ignored, right, because it doesn't have any effect on any one race. But if you're looking big picture, this is kind of the poll that tells you generally how voters are feeling heading into an election year. It's a pretty good measure of that, actually. I mean, look at the generic ballot heading into the final couple of weeks before Election Day in 2006 when Democrats did so well. It was pretty easy to predict that Democrats were going to have a super year that year. They were up by 13, up by 20, up by 18. They were up in every poll in the 2 weeks before Election Day when voters got asked, which party do you want to win? People said Democrats, 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 every poll. That was 2006. And then in those elections, the Democrats trounced the Republicans. Same deal in 2010, but the other direction. In the next midterm election in 2010, Democrats, of course, got trounced. In all of the generic ballots, you could see that trouncing coming a mile away. In generic ballots leading up to the election in 2010, Republicans were up by 15 points, by 13 points. People didn't care who the candidate was. This wasn't about individual races. They just wanted Republicans to win Congress. Republicans, 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 every poll. And then that's how people voted in 2010. Republicans won big time. Generic ballot polling actually tells you how things are going to go in the midterms. And now look at the generic polling for this year. In the last 8 generic ballots before the election this year, it's Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. Republicans up in 4 of the last 8, Democrats up in 4 of the last 8. Half and half. This is not how this usually looks before a midterm election, at least not before a midterm election where you can predict very clearly what the results are going to be. Usually the generic ballot helps us see from a mile away what's about to happen. This year, it's clear as mud. Question mark. Which is kind of awesome to watch while it's happening, even if it makes people who are being very certain about their prognostication look a little out on thin ice. Joining us now is somebody who, by law, must always be on the show on Halloween. I don't know how this has become a tradition, but it's a tradition. Senator Amy Klobuchar is back with us again on Halloween for a 3rd straight year. She's recently been out on the campaign trail, Georgia, North Carolina, New Hampshire, just to name a few. Senator Klobuchar, thank you so much for being here. Happy Halloween.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Happy Halloween to you. We don't have a witch running in Delaware, an actual witch this time, but I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
Well, you are the chair of the Joint Economic Committee. That's obviously your area of focus in the Senate. You're also a total political animal. Can you explain to me, with those sort of 2 sides of you, how come all this good economic news hasn't meant more good political prognostication for your party, for the president and his party?
Well, I think, first of all, you are right, and I will defend your honor on Fox if you'd like. In fact, the gas prices are at their lowest level in 4 years. Unemployment is much better than the depths of the downturn. In fact, in my state, unemployment's down to 4.1%.
Wow.
We have a situation where we've had 55 straight months of job growth, and we still know that people are suffering out there and a lot of work needs to be done. But the point is that there have been some pretty dramatic changes. And a lot of these senators that are on the ballot, from Kay Hagan in North Carolina to Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire to Mark Udall in Colorado, they worked very hard to get policies in place, whether it was the Recovery Act or Wall Street reform or all kinds of things, and energy, and a lot of work that was done to make this recovery happen. The recovery is about jobs and it's about our businesses and our workers, but some policies were put in place and some tough votes taken. So I do hope, and I think one of the reasons you see, despite all of the noise and the $44 million spent against Kay Hagan in North Carolina, you still see our candidates hanging in there and ahead in so many polls. And I just think part of this is in states where the candidates are very focused on talking about the economy. They're tending to do well, and I predict that this election is not going to be the kind of landslide that you have some pundits talking about. I think you're going to see some surprise wins. I can't wait to see what happens in Georgia. I was there yesterday with Michelle Nunn, and I have to tell you, she is running a grassroots campaign that Paul Wellstone would be proud of in terms of how she's getting those volunteers out there, door to door, just getting people out there like that have never been involved in politics before, and you can see that in those numbers. Early voting.
I was just going to
early voting.
I wanted to interrupt you about one thing that you said there about both tactics, but also the message as these candidates are trying to make the case, and in a lot of these places, as you say, tens of millions of dollars being spent against them. A lot of Democratic candidates widely outspent, not just by the Republican Party, but by outside groups and stuff. Do you think that, or is what you're saying here, that when Democrats are doing better than expected, it's because they've been very disciplined about keeping the message on the economy, that Democrats talking about the economy is working, even though the rest of the, sort of pundit sphere talking about the election isn't focused on that?
I think that's true, and I also think you have in Kay's case, her opponent slashed education funding as Speaker of the House in the state legislature, and by a 24-point margin. The people of North Carolina, the voters of North Carolina, don't agree with that. And so when you're able to make that kind of contrast on the economy, I think it makes a difference. And I'd also add, for people that are questioning enthusiasm, in both Georgia and North Carolina, you have incredible numbers with 212,000 voters registered early in Georgia and in North Carolina actually outpacing early voting that you saw in the presidential year. So I just think that there's a lot going on here, as coming from the state, which you know, where Al Franken, he's doing incredibly well this time, but back in 08 won by 312 votes, Rachel. I think people that claim that they can predict when these polls are so close, I just don't think anyone can. I'll never forget that picture of Heidi Heitkamp in her election in North Dakota, where the next day she held up the headline from the local paper that had predicted her defeat, and she won that election.
Senator, I have to ask you, because we keep meeting on Halloween, obviously you and I both are bad at celebrating Halloween because we keep both sort of going to work and being with one another on a satellite feed. Is there some other holiday that you do like freaking awesome that counteracts how poorly we both do Halloween?
You mean like when I'm not working? Yes, Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Like I tend to actually like make some food and decorate. But I was thinking, Rachel, with 2 of these states, as you know, could go into runoffs.
Right.
And so while we've always had these election Halloweens together, the voters in those states might just kind of say, boo, the election's not over. And you and I could well be spending Thanksgiving
and
Christmas, New Year's Eve, talking about these elections, because it may not end. As you know, one runoff's December 6th and one's January 6th.
Wow. Well, to New Year's Eve in New Orleans, if need be. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, thank you so much for being here. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, trick or treat. Now I have to figure out what to do with all this candy, which has been giving off this chocolate waft throughout this entire segment. This has been very distracting. All right, we've got lots ahead tonight, including me cleaning up my desk before we move on. We'll be right back.